Hi, my name is Anne Cooper and I'm a coffee roasting consultant with more than 24 years experience in the coffee industry. I'm here today to conduct a Q&A session with all of the wonderful roasters in Perth at Carbon Coffee. I'm really excited about the opportunity to pass on my experience and skills with other roasters here in Perth. I hope you enjoy today's Q&A. Wow, thank you so much for coming here. This is awesome. Maybe just for some of you that I haven't met, maybe just a little bit of a who the hell am I? So my name is Anne Cooper. I've been in the coffee industry for about 24 years. Had an opportunity to work at all levels in the industry. Started as a barista, then worked my way through into training and management. Did a brief stint working with franchising, and then had my own cafe for about a year. And then also at the same time, I was getting involved in the barista competitions. And then as a result of competing, there was a natural need to learn more about roasting and about the coffee itself. So then through that, I got my first roasting job with DeBella Coffee in Brisbane. So really full-on commercial roasting. So I was doing about 10 tonne a week. It was all manual, all by hand, and it was really hard work. So I was on a 60 kilo Petroncini, and then eventually the 120 kilo Petroncini came along, and it was about 16 tonne by the time I left DeBella Coffee, because then after that I had an awesome opportunity to move to New York. So my husband got sponsored by Colgate, and I was able to jump onto his visa and then work in New York. And I started working for a company called Dallas Brothers Coffee, and that's where I really learnt the skills on really getting to know more single origin roasting, specialty roasting, but also still commodity commercial roasting as well, because it was a 100-year-old company and they still had their commercial part of the business. So they had a 240 kilo Jarvis Burns roaster, just basically just like feed and go kind of roasting. And then I was on a Probat G45 and a UG15. So I got a really nice chance to sort of learn more about that hands-on kind of manual approach with the roasting there. And then came back to Australia, landed in Melbourne, and I was the head roaster for Prouds when the roastery was based in Footscray. We had a little UG15 and a Gießen W1, pumping out as much as we could on the roaster there. And then not long after that, I started really wanting to get back into, I really loved teaching, and I saw an opportunity to get out and start training with roasters. So I created a roasting course and then started consulting one-on-one with roasters. And now I've got the fabulous opportunity where pretty much every week I'm on a different roaster. So one week I'm on something like this, where I've got 3 roasting systems side by side. Then I might be on a Probat, I might be on a Diedrich, I might be on a Loring, I might be on something else, all different ranges and sizes. And I think from that, then just really then getting a feel for what you guys are really looking for as roasters in terms of information and guidance, and just knowing that how you can really start working together and chatting together and create your own really great community to start supporting each other. What I did want to do is maybe just if you can just start yelling at me what roasters in terms of equipment we have in the room. So who's roasting on what? What have we got? I guess back to you guys now. Is there anything that you've wondered? Is there anything that you've always wanted to ask in relation to the roasters that you're roasting on? This is your chance just to... Have you ever wondered about, I don't know, rise rate, or why do I have to take a particular approach on my roaster, or how do I get body and sweetness out of my coffee? How would you describe the airflow on a Diedrich? What sort of burners does it have on the bigger ones?
Not infrared, just conventional.
It is conventional, yeah. So you probably don't need to use that whole convective theory that Diedrich have, where you start building up heat in the air and then you start, like, you direct. Do you use your baffle to direct the air?
It's got purely just a big ducted fan.
Yep.
At the back end of the roaster.
Yep.
That pushes it through.
Yep.
The front.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's just and that's my other question is, am I blowing cold air into my roaster, or is it like a fan-forced oven where moving air makes it cook faster?
It will be like that at some point. So when you have your burners on maximum, when you have air moving like fast at the same point, yes, it will be like a convection oven, and it's very efficient at getting the heat into the centre of the bean at that point, definitely. So be really super careful when you've got fast or like efficient fan speed movement with high burners. So you probably only want that to be happening at the beginning of the roast. You definitely don't want that happening towards the end of the roast. Yep, definitely. Especially because you've got a more mass of coffee to deal with as well. So you've got to think about then the radiant heat of the beans themselves towards the end of the roast and managing that also in line with everything else that's going on with that mass. Yep. Whereas on your Diedrich, do you have the manifold where you can direct the air to the cooling tray and then into the drum? And do you manipulate that at different points in the roast?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
We pull air through the drum several times, mostly to pull chaff away,
Yep.
and it moderates and allows us to extend the later part of the roast.
Yep. But majority with like your Diedrichs is that the recommendation is to have the air through the tray in the beginning, and then you start then directing it into the drum once colour change starts happening, and then it can then starts to help cleaning up the chaff and the smoke. And then depending on what techniques you want to do, you can then play around with how you want to direct that air through the system. Yep, cool. But whereas with the Probertino, it's very much genuinely meant to work on like pure conduction, and you manage that with the amount of coffee that you put in the drum, what you know about the beans. So before you guys even start a roast, there's a lot of stuff that you need to consider as one before you start. So how much coffee are you putting in the drum, the screen size of the bean, the density, the moisture, all the properties about that green bean, and then what do you want to achieve out of that coffee will then also help determine how you want to start, what sort of temperature you want to start with, and then how you want to start moving that coffee through the roast. But I definitely wouldn't try and make a Probat move like a Diedrich. No.
We're pretty much not going down that route anyway.
Yeah, but the best way would obviously be to help her understand the system itself and how it cooks, so to speak, and then what that then means in terms of, manipulating the heat. Yeah, because those roasters can get super hot.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
They take a long time to cool as well.
Correct.
So my next question would then kind of be, would you find that you obviously need to think well in advance in the roast, but would you be manipulating it quite a lot on the actual gas? Because I find like maybe 4 adjustments slowly down throughout the roast is probably good.
Yep.
Whereas we've been playing around with just 1 adjustment, but I don't tend to get much, great results out of that. It's more slow turn down, right towards the end.
So Jono was asking about, I guess, like general adjustments throughout the roast, and maybe like maybe getting guidance on what would be a way to know how to make an adjustment. Is that kind of, and then can you do too many adjustments?
Well, I suppose I'm more sort of saying, is it better to have quite a few adjustments in that because you don't have that control with the airflow? So, because that's really your only form of control.
Yes,
Is it better to have quite a lot of adjustment on that then?
That depends on, I guess, the way that you start your roast. Like, if you haven't started with the right amount of energy, then you're going to be in a little bit of trouble and you will run out of room with your adjustments. If you do have too much energy, then of course you will have to do more incremental adjustments to manage that. What do you guys use as a guide to help you manage your adjustments? So what are you looking at to help you decide on an adjustment? What's one key thing that would be guiding you?
Colour change?
Colour change, and what else?
Time in between sort of the stages.
Your rise rate, yeah. So I'd be super focusing on rise rate.
Yeah, that's what we do. We basically follow Scott Rare's model of the basic curve.
Yep.
And use that as a guide and then try and follow that. And but we pretty much do trial and error. We follow a basic one, and then we try a different one, then a different one, cut the results. And keep going from there.
Yep. Because as you know, then different coffees will roast and react differently depending on how you approach it. So one thing I'm a really big fan of is, along with that focus on the rise rate, is the colour change and the checkpoints. Like achieving a colour change and a checkpoint in a certain time in relation to your system. And this is where it can really do your head in, is because what you would do like on your system, there's no way I'd be doing that, you know, on a Gießen or a Vittoria or a Probat. So basically then the coffee will teach you guys how to almost use the roaster. If you say you want to get to your first colour change between 5 and 6 minutes, for example, then you assign, you know, a temperature relevant to your system. Different probes will read differently. We've all got different thicknesses, different positions. So probes are super important on your roasters because they are giving us everything. We are basing super important decisions on probe placement and probe thickness. I've been seeing a really decent variation that's been going around, yeah. So definitely the difference between putting your... is everyone clear on where you should put a probe? But like ideally, when you're trying to work out where the best place to put your probes are, with the bean probe, so with your drums, depending on the direction in which your drum is spinning, so if your drum is spinning anti-clockwise, then the mass of the coffee will be over on this side. So you want to have your bean probe on this side of the drum. Give yourself an opportunity too, don't place it too high, and obviously don't place it too low because you want to give yourself the opportunity to do a smaller batch size if you want to. So if your bean probe is up too high, I've been seeing a lot of probes up higher above the door. So let's say this is your door. I've been seeing probes up here for the bean. You do want to try and have your bean probe a little bit lower in the door because it will give you the opportunity to do a smaller bean, a smaller batch size if you want to. And then if it's going the other direction, then, sorry, getting confused here. And then if it's going clockwise, then obviously you want to have your bean probe over on this side. Who is then measuring their environmental and their exhaust temperature on their roasters? Yep. Recommended, what have you guys been recommended for probe placement for your exhaust or environment? Where have most people been putting that?
Just on that, along with Beatrice, we've got a post-Cold War 12 kilo Probat as well.
Oh, nice.
The only probe is in the, literally just below the hopper. There is not in the bean temperature at all. So
Oh,
it's purely
wow.
roaster atmospheric.
Okay, so is it like a little bit higher?
Right there,
So,
yes.
so you've got the hopper here.
And it's just below it. In
As
the
in-
actual, in the chute on the way into the roaster, so it's roast air,
Great.
not bean temperature at all.
Yep. No, and that is the perfect place for your environment. I have been seeing and hearing a lot of recommendation to put your environment probe here in the top part of your drum, but just know that that's not the actual genuine hottest part of the drum. There is actually more intensity and better heat in that part of the drum there. So as the hot air is exiting the drum, you're going to get the hottest part of that exhaust. So if you are in that thinking of making sure, if you're thinking that your environment temperature should always be above your bean temperature, that will never happen if you have your exhaust probe sitting in that part of the drum. So you do want to have it a little bit higher up in the throat of the hopper. But be really careful that the door doesn't knock that probe, so make sure it's in position there nicely. And then on the newer models of roasters that have been coming out, Probat in particular, and I don't quite understand why yet, they've been putting their environmental probe all the way at the back of the drum on the exiting part of and it's really frustrating because you've just got this curve that kind of looks the same as your bean, which is great, but it's not quite giving you a really true readout of the intensity of your environment. Yeah, exactly. Because my understanding, especially with the with conduction roasters in particular, is that you need to build up energy in your environment first, so then you can start taking away the burners and let your coffee sail out in really beautiful hot air. But you can't do that if you haven't like built enough energy. But if your probe's not reading properly, it can be a little bit hard to sort of get to know, yeah, what to do with those burners. So, yeah, probe placement is super important, and the thickness. So you've probably heard like 3 mil is like a recommended thickness. It does read very quickly, but I wouldn't definitely recommend it on bigger roasters. I wouldn't put it on a 70 kilo. I wouldn't put it probably anything on above 45. because that mass is just going to destroy that probe. So don't be afraid to have a slightly thicker probe on your bigger roasters.
Type of probe.
Sorry?
And type of probe, like we found.
And
today.
type of probe, yeah, definitely. So K-types are obviously, like, they're great. I think there's still a few J's floating around that I've seen, but K is definitely like a really better model to have. So with your probe, yeah, yep, cool. And it just wore out? Is it just...
It, for some reason, it was fine, and then Friday it
Yep.
just decided it didn't want to
Just
read
didn't
the right
want to read.
temperature.
Oh,
And
God.
the correlation between the heat input and the barrel temp was just like, hang on a minute, that's way off.
And actually, that's really good. What advice could you guys maybe give other roasters in the room? How did you know that it just wasn't working?
Because I always, when we get in, I always put heaps of heat into the drum to get hot air into the drum, obviously, so, you know, there's heat in the drum so the first roast isn't, you know, slow.
Doesn't take too long? Yep.
And then, you know, wait for your barrel temp to kind of stabilise before you load
Mhm.
the first roast. But
Yep.
it just wasn't going up to where it should. It kind of sat, you know, about 50 degrees less, and then
Oh,
it kind
wow.
of came up a bit, and then sat about 20 degrees less than what it usually would.
We adjusted the
And I
probe.
was thinking, oh, it's a bit cooler today.
Oh, so you just tried wiggling it until you see if the connection was right.
Closer to the bin.
So you had dropped your coffee at that stage.
We hadn't dropped any coffee into it.
No,
It was
yeah,
just
we hadn't
before we started.
roasted any yet,
Yep.
so we noticed there was a problem before we
Okay.
did any. But
And so, did you still have to do production that day?
yeah, well,
Yep.
we ended up pulling it right out, and
Yep.
there was a little bit of
Bit of build-up?
like
Yeah.
oil build up on it.
Nice.
So I gave it a scrub,
Yep.
put it back in,
Yep.
and then you know, obviously marked where exactly how far it is, because I know they're pretty sensitive with that thing.
Yep.
And we put it back into where it was marked, but it was still about 10 under,
Yep.
so it was still closer to where it was.
Yeah,
We
good.
played around with the placement a bit and pushed it in, and we thought maybe it's just, you know, for some reason
Yep.
it's become a little less sensitive. So
Yep.
we tried to get it pretty close, you know, what our heat input would normally.
So you had like a knowledge and a record of like a base idea of how your profile should move. So then you can comfortably think through, like, you know that the readout isn't quite right, but you know how to think your way through then the roast because you've had a pattern to follow.
Under, so then
Yep.
I created another profile and just changed all of my temps to 10 degrees
Yep.
under,
Nice.
so that it was doing the same thing, but just
Yep.
based it on you know,
Yep.
that temperature.
Excellent.
But then about halfway through the first roast, it decided to kind of go back to normal. So then I quickly changed it back to my normal profile,
Yeah.
and then
Don't
it
you
ended
just
up
love-
being alright. And then
Yeah.
the second one, it was
Yep.
fine. And
Has
we were
any,
like,
yeah,
what the hell?
yeah. Has anybody
Well,
else?
The rest of the day was fine. I didn't,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Well, I guess, but again, like it's a good lesson in that, yes, we do rely on our readouts in a certain way, but it is really important that while you're roasting, give yourself a chance to get to know your system, get to know how it moves, get to know the general pattern. So when something does go a bit wobbly, you're able to think your way through, because there's nothing worse than standing at the roaster, knowing you need to make a decision and you're not quite sure what to look at. So what else would you guys use as a guide? Let's say your temperature probe just completely cacked it. What else could you use as a way to guide you through a roast? Smoke. Not quite, but yeah, maybe. What else? So you would heavily rely on your timer. You would definitely make sure that you're on track with your colour changes. So then you kind of know. Sorry? Definitely listen for first crack. Yep. Has anybody really relied on their environmental before and sort of not really used their bean as a guide? So really encourage you, really watch your environment. It's a really great way to connect more with your roaster as well. So if your bean probe does go down, you can very comfortably work your way through a roast. So in combination with your timer, your colour changes, so your sensors are just definitely on stereo then, and you can really rely on that to help you, work your way through a roast. So if your bean probe, does, decide to, kill itself, there's definitely other ways to move through that roast. Cool. Yes.
Yeah, if you're speaking about time now, I
Yes.
was always curious.
Yes.
No one ever really said too much about length of roast and time,
Yes.
especially big versus small
Yep.
and stuff like that.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah, what's your take on time?
So do you mean as in the overall length of the roast?
Yeah, the length of the roast.
Yeah, so I guess potentially a little bit depending on the system, but in general, oh, I could get into trouble here. Time. So I guess I work on, what I like to do is I have a range of parameters. So I just keep it simple. I've got parameters for a sample roast, a filter roast, and an espresso roast. So with a filter roast, for example, I always want to hit first crack between 7 and 8 minutes, and I want to be out by about 9.5 minutes, for example. To me, that's a really tidy, solid, like sample roast. But of course, it's how do you get there? That's, you know, the other key things to keep an eye on. For my filters, oh goodness. So I tend to work on, I'm a very big fan of, I love acid in filter, but I want body and sweetness underneath that acid. I want to be drinking a nice cup of like orange juice. I don't want to have a big smack of sour that I just can't drink from top to bottom throughout the cup. So I tend to try and get to first crack maybe more between like 8 to 9 minutes on a filter. And then probably develop for about 1.5 to 2 minutes for that. So I might be out by like 11 minutes, you know, at the latest. And then espresso then will be slightly longer again. So I tend to float maybe between 12.5, no more than 13 minutes. But then again, depending on batch size and the size of the roaster, because I'm like on your 70 kilo, what would an espresso roast be coming out on that? Maybe like 14, kind of in that range. You don't have to say, but...
I'm coming from another dark approach in the States.
Yep.
So add a few minutes to that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, obviously then, you know, if you want to go a little bit further, you might be in between 15 to 16 or something like that. Yeah, for sure. But you want to make sure you're also encouraging nice... Sorry?
I was just going to say that's probably a good question for Lynn is I can bring a roast down to 10, 11, 12
Exactly.
on the probat.
Yep,
Happily.
yep,
Cannot get the same milk. Impossible. I've had it impossible.
Yep.
When I'm roasting 60 kilos.
yeah, exactly. Because you've really got to you've got to babysit that mass of coffee. You've got to pump a truckload of energy into it to start getting it to move. And then you've got to start really like carefully guiding it into first crack, and then just really then watch that energy first crack onwards, because you've got the energy in the coffee itself, the radiant energy, as well as all the energy in the drum and everything around it. So you've really got to babysit that coffee out. So yeah, is there, yeah, no, that's right. So then I guess along with that time, I'm also super passionate about the middle part of the roast. I'm really always focused on spending at least 2 to 2.5 minutes. You've got to give yourself a little bit of room, but 2 minutes in between colour change. So between like yellow and that really beautiful crusty bread smell, I really make sure I'm spending a nice amount of time, because then I know I'm about a minute, maybe 1.5 minutes away from first crack. Because then what I'm finding is that even on a filter roast, I will still really focus hard on that middle part of the profile and really develop the sweetness and the sugars and allow them to do their thing. So then you can go as fast as you want, because first crack onwards, that's your signature. That's you guys. That's what you can do. You know, you can highlight the acid, or you can stretch it out and round it out and just make it more kind of like jammy and caramel and chocolate. So yeah, so very much how do you get there is a very big key part of that time factor as well.
Going to that as well, someone taught me a new technique recently.
Yep.
Soaking. What's your theory?
Depends on the roasting system. On a soaking. So soaking, yeah, no, so soaking would be if you've got like a super hot roaster, sorry. So I would generally always, if it's a double wall drum, cast iron, heavy as, so definitely on probats, 100% yes, I would soak, because they have a massive amount of heat. When these roasters get hot, holy guacamole, they really hold the heat. Same thing on the Geissens. But then on like Hasgarantes, like some of the single wall drums, you need to get the heat into that straight away. You've got to start getting heat into it really quickly. But yeah, very much dependent on the roasting system. So if it's a really full-on conductive, hot as hell system, you find you might have to soak a little bit before you start getting the heat into it. So soaking is like you dropping the coffee into the drum, but on a really low burner. Probably below, what percentage would we say? Below 20%? Kind of.
Oh, I've been doing about 40, 50.
Oh, okay, so that's still pretty decently high. Okay.
That's sort of a really low level.
Yeah, so you would drop.
Of them when I go to it, gas.
Of what your maximum is,
Go up,
yeah,
go up,
yeah. But basically, just holding the green at a really low kind of like gas temperature, letting it drop in and turn, and then you pick a point where, whether it's at the turn, then smash it and start getting like the maximum heat into it. So some of the double wall, really highly conductive drums, you need to really watch how hot the drums get. So, and especially if you're doing a small, sorry? Yeah, exactly. Yep, correct. And then especially if you're doing a small batch in those drums as well, you possibly might have to soak for as long as 2 minutes, maybe 2.5, before you can start just tapping in and grabbing that and start to get the heat into it. Yep. That's the system I would mostly do it on. Has anybody else had any experience with soaking or practicing that at all? Yep. So instead of, tell me about how do you start a roast? So what level do you have the burners at when you start a roast?
We're in Fahrenheit,
Yep.
so we bring it down to about 180.
Yep.
So
Celsius, or you can talk in Fahrenheit, that's cool.
when we drop.
Do you charge at 380?
180.
About 390.
390? Yep.
We drop it about 390 Fahrenheit.
Yep.
And it drops down to about 175.
Yep. And what level are your burners at that point when you start at the beginning of the roast? Are they kind of at a medium height, or are they pretty much rear and go?
We turn the gas low.
Yep.
To drop it from the previous batch.
Yes.
And as it cools, we drop it in.
Excellent. So you let the
And then
temperature
we
float?
turn the
Yep.
gas on.
So pretty much as soon as the beans drop in, you're turning the heat up? Yes. So, yep. So you would need to do... Yep, so soaking means holding the green in the drum at a really low burner rate. So it's just allowing the beans just to start rolling in the drum without starting the cooking process. And then you pick a point when you want to go to maximum. So on a ProBat, because it has a double wall drum, it retains the heat enormously. So it doesn't need help from the burner in the beginning. So you can drop the beans in and start the whole process. Yeah, so you need to start putting the heat into the drum like what you have been. And it's the same on like a Hasgarante, the North, what else is a single wall? Topa, yep, yeah, and the Jopa as well. Jopas especially, you've really got to kick it straight away. Absolutely.
So what are the faults in that situation if you don't, to begin scorching? Too much energy going into the beans, or just too high to...
Yep, so you'll start turning the coffee too quickly, and then you will definitely start to encourage scorching. Yep. Tipping, in my experience, generally happens at the end of the roast. So if you're going through first crack and you've got too much energy in your burners, you're going to start to see steam coming out the ends of the beans. So if you're going too fast and hot, especially on a Brazil coffee, hold it up to your lamps. And you'll start to see the steam not coming from the centre, you'll start to see it coming from the ends of the bean. So that's a nice sign that you've got too much heat going on with your burners, and you will definitely get tipping on the ends of your beans there. Always, from my experience, it's always at the end. Right. Yep, definitely. But so then just with that soaking, so on a really hot drum, you need to get the green in, just get it to start rolling around and getting into the heat of the drum first, and then about 1.5 minutes, you often have to wait for the turn. It can actually, how long, you've tried it? Yeah, so you can get to 1.5 minutes, you can wait that long on a low heat, And just, yeah, it's because the drum is just so much hotter. Because if we on a Probat, if we dropped the coffee in and went to maximum straight away, then it would just start shooting off too quickly. And you'll just start burning the coffee. And what will happen is that you'll get colour change maybe in 3 minutes or 4 minutes. And then you get then all of a sudden you're starting to have to over control the roast, and you're tempted to then pull the energy out of the coffee, and then you start losing the opportunity for the sugars to start caramelizing, because you start over controlling the roaster, and then you've just lost all opportunity to develop the sugars appropriately in the middle of the profile on a really heavy hot drum. Yep. Yeah, so it's just that difference between the different roasting systems that you would try that technique. Yeah.
And can I just say that on
Yes.
some of my roasts, I am soaking on a Husqvarna.
Oh, nice. Wow. Because normally on a Hasgaranti, you have to like kick it in. Yeah.
What size?
Okay, so
Oh, you've got-
I'm doing standard, third wave roast for my roast. I also have a dark roast as well.
Yep.
It's got a hot ambient temperature, and I've got so much heat in the system that I'm annoying. But if I go on to high burning settings, below 37, then I will generally light my...
Yep, so what's your name?
Right.
Brad. So Brad was talking about his Hasgaranti. What size is it again? 15, yeah. And he was saying that he's been trying soaking on his Hasgaranti. So my question to you though is, what's your idling protocol in between roasts? Are you moving fairly quickly?
Yeah, 1 minute from dropping.
Yep.
And,
So that's why Brad is possibly in a situation why he has to soak, because moving from roast to roast very quickly doesn't give the system enough time just to kind of like cool down and stabilise. So I can understand why you're doing that, but I guess if you've come up with a technique that is working to get around that. But idling protocol in between roasts is super important. You've got to keep your system stable, and whatever system or whatever technique you choose to use, like how many, I know we've got some teams here, so put your hands up who's in a team. What roasting teams do we have here? So how many people in a team? We've got at least 3 here, 4, 5, 2, 2. So especially you guys that have got more than 2 people, yep, so you guys, you've really got to make sure that you all think consistently and how you move from roast to roast. Because if you start a roast differently from another roaster, there is no way that the profiles will lay over each other. There is no way you're going to be able to follow whatever profile has been marked if you don't start exactly the same way. So it's super important that you have that technique in place. So that does mean if you get caught out and if you're having to ramp up the burners to get to your starting temperature, whereas if your technique is what you guys are doing where you're floating down to get to your starting temperature, that ramping up versus floating down is a very different way of starting the roast, and your profiles will start to roast very differently. And then you're going to be standing there going, oh my God, the profiles aren't matching, what do I do? So it's really important that you guys are very consistent with your techniques from roast to roast.